Hey, good afternoon, folks. We're coming to you from the Cosmic Campground in New Mexico. Our guest today is Stephanie, aka Little Hippie Gal. She's a nomad like the rest of us, but interestingly, she does it a little different. Stephanie, how is your nomading different than, say, van life or schoolie life?
So I actually live in a Tesla, which wasn't the plan originally, but has ended up going really, really well. So I've been in here over a year now.
Okay, so you're which Tesla? There's like three or four. So which Teslas are we talking about here?
I'm in the Model Y, so it's kind of I can show you the back here. It's
Okay.
actually kind of an SUV, so I
All
can
right.
reach all the back there. There's another one that's more of a sedan that has a bit of a cutoff here. Oh, let me turn the ringer volume off. Um, and then there's a third that has the doors that open like on the roof. But I
Okay.
think that was just a little bit bigger, much more expensive.
Yeah, I have no doubt. Teslas aren't even cheap when they're the cheap version. Uh, I should have covered this at the beginning, but I forgot, so I'm going to cover it now, which means we're going to talk a little logistics. Uh, this is a record locally, upload after type of application. So when we are done, please do not disconnect until it says 100% uploaded. Okay. Have you ever heard of the Cosmic Campground? So it's one of the darkest places that you can go in the United States at night. It's actually registered as an international dark skies thing. There's some dark skies treaty. And we're not actually in the official campground just because, I mean, one of the reasons we nomad is to avoid people. And there are people in the campground. But we're about a half a mile from the campground in the Gia National Forest. Where are you at right now?
On Vancouver Island. It is my favorite place. I have been meaning to leave now for probably 2.5 months, and I just keep prolonging my stay. So I don't know what I'm up to now. I was kind of thinking I would go south this winter, but maybe I'll just hang out here. I don't know.
Well, we do have a bricks and sticks, and we nomad about 80% of the year because we
Nice.
also go out during the spring and summer. But we have 10 acres and a house in Bellingham, Washington. So,
Oh,
uh,
nice.
yeah, not far from you, which means that you're dealing with nasty weather, and it's going to get even nastier in the next month.
Cold, yeah.
What do you do for heat?
Yeah. So I can actually run the Tesla like 24/7 with heat or AC, whatever I need, and it keeps up with pretty much everything that I've put it through so far. So we'll see
So,
how it
well,
goes winter.
I I would be interested in that because I mean, outside of I mean, we're all living small, but compared to what you're living in, I'm living in a mansion. I've got a six-window truck base. But I mean, how often do you have to charge it?
It kind of depends what I'm doing. If I were going to charge and then drive right to a like really close campsite, for example, and then just run it overnight but not be driving around, it uses between 10 and about 15% of the battery every night that I'm running it. So I could do probably 3 days, maybe four, depending on how cold it gets, because it does use a little more once it's cold. The other only thing that comes into that is just range with actual mileage. So if I wanted to drive
Right.
to a campsite that was farther out, then that of course would cut down on how many nights I could stay.
And how is I mean, so you're in Canada right now. Are you, I mean, you don't have to share, of course, but are you a U.S. citizen, a Canadian citizen, a bi citizen?
No, I'm Canadian. I would love to be a bi citizen, but I am Canadian.
Okay. So what is the infrastructure for a Tesla EVs up there? I mean, I've seen them in downtown Vancouver, BC, but I mean that's not what you're trying to do, right?
Exactly. So I can't speak to anything past Saskatchewan. I haven't gone farther east than that. I've pretty much just stayed on the west coast. Um, However, over here, especially in BC, it's really, really good now. The island is great. The whole island has coverage. A lot of it is free coverage. So I actually will drive around and charge completely for free. I haven't paid for a charge at this point in like 2 months, which is incredible. And I just sleep at the chargers. So it gives me like a automatic parking spot wherever I am that I can stay all night. Nobody ever bothers me, and it's
That's
free.
interesting.
That's
Well, I
wonderful.
mean, it's not free. You pay through it with your taxes, right?
Yes. Well, it depends where you're charging because some of them are all of the chargers are independent at this point. So some of them are hosted by Tesla. Those are the ones that you would pay for.
Right.
Some of them are hosted through like the Flow charging network, and then through there, businesses can buy their own chargers. So some of the businesses will just fully sponsor a charger. Like if a Tim Hortons, for example, wanted to increase the traffic at their business, they would just fully sponsor that for their customers.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, I've seen that. So in the state, one of the things that I was looking into, and we don't have a lot of them in the States anymore, but the chargers that are 20 amp chargers versus these, massive chargers that we use now.
Yeah.
Because we were out in the middle of nowhere and our house batteries, we just weren't getting enough solar.
Right.
And we can charge probably in 24 hours on our house batteries, we can charge pretty much 800 amps. So if I was able to find, just one 20 amp plug-in that I could plug into legally, I'm not interested in siphoning people's power. Then I could have recharged the house and then we're good to go. Um, what do you mind? What do you do for a living? I mean, you've got a Tesla, so you're not broke.
No, I actually that's a long story, but the Tesla was actually a gift. So I'm definitely not as rich as I appear to some online, I think. I would love if that were true, but it's not. So yeah, I have this because it's paid off and everything. I basically don't have living expenses in here aside from when I do occasionally pay for a charge and insurance. My insurance is massive though. And then I just work online. I was doing kind of I'm going to say data entry position,
Okay.
but I that for the content creation sphere at this point. I'm not sure where that will take me, but we will see. I don't know.
So when you say content creation, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, that's like the new thing. Well, not even new. In the last 5 years or so, I'm a content creator, and I know a
Yes.
lot of content creators that, well, to be frank, are not content creators. So what is it? What is it? The content that, I mean, are you looking to sell advertising or like click throughs or product endorsements, or are you actually doing like producer work for other people?
So I've started my own pages it's starting to bring in a little bit of money, which is amazing. I would love if it could fully fund everything eventually, but that will be a long ways down the road. And then I'm also doing some UGC for other companies, which is a lot of my friends have kind of gone into that as well. I think once you kind of know what you're doing, it can be very lucrative. But when you're starting, it's a little bit touch and go because there's no standard right now. So everyone that you talk to is doing something different. Every brand is looking for something different. So it's very much like nobody knows what's going on right now. So it's learn as you go, but that's okay. And it's
Can
also
you
very volatile in that you never really know when the next project will be coming up or anything.
Can you talk about the first part? The first thing you said, only pages. Is that what you said?
YouTube?
Oh, YouTube. I thought I heard only pages, and I was like, I'm
Oh
not
no,
sure what
YouTube.
that is. Okay, so you are doing YouTube content creation. Is the idea? I mean, basically, are you monetizing that through YouTube? Is that the idea?
I'd love to do some like brand partnerships at some point. I know a few friends have partnered with like electric vehicle companies eventually and things like that. So if I could eventually get in with somebody who was, producing an electric van and move up that way, I would love to do that. But I think that'll be probably another year or so down the road. I don't think that's going to be an overnight project by any means.
I tell you, I mean, if someone were to say to me, "Hey, JD, here's a canoe," those canoe vans. Have you
Yeah.
seen those?
Oh,
Um, they're interesting. They look kind of like a. I mean, you're a bit young for this, but the old school Toyota Siennas, they looked kind of like a half an egg.
okay.
And the new canoes, they're a full size van that kind of looks the same. They're kind of neat looking. I'd be interested, but I'd be worried. I mean, right now I can sit so as long as I've got food.
Yeah.
I mean, I can sit someplace a long. In fact, uh, we basically can boondock We did our longest boondocking just this past month. We were out for 21 days. With the
Really nice.
Yeah, I mean, with our only exception being that we did have to go to a laundromat.
Right.
But other than that, I mean, we were out in the middle of nowhere enjoying thousands and thousands of acres with no neighbors. And we either use Starlink and we only hook up the Starlink when we don't have good enough 4G, which is rare in the States nowadays. Um, so on content creation, now I have not seen your channel. I have, of course, stalked your Instagram. What is it that you on YouTube? What are the videos that, I mean, because obviously, if we can get some people to visit your YouTube channel, that's going to help you out. You're helping us out by being a guest. So talk to us a little bit about what you're creating on YouTube.
And blog. I have such a backload of content that I'm like sitting on trying to decide what I want to do with it. And I have about four directions that I kind of want to go in. I think the world right now is just in a really negative place. And I think putting something that's positive out for people would probably be super beneficial for a lot of people. Um, I know for myself, like I've kind of stopped following anything that has negativity. I don't really watch the news anymore. I stay informed to an extent, and that's it. I'm like, I just can't. There's too much. And it comes from all sides. And I would love to be super into every single cause, but I find it like I feel constantly like I'm not doing enough for anything then. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to stop all of that and just focus on, positivity and living happily and doing that. And I think a lot of people could benefit from that. So I think I'm probably going to move kind of into that space and just sharing, what I'm doing to do that, like healthy living, vegan living, all of that good stuff. So I think that's the way that it's probably going to go. But for now, it's just, yeah, living in the Tesla vlogs because I get a ton of questions about that.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, that's by its very nature is, uh, it's unique. I don't know of any Tesla dwellers except for you now.
I have, I can send you a few friends after we're done talking that have channels as well. Um, Gosh, who comes to mind? Living in a Tesla. His name is Jimmy. He's been in his Model Y as well now for at least a year. I think he's a little bit longer than I am, even, to be honest, but he's quite a while. And then I've got another friend down in the States who is online as well, but he shares stuff about like playing a trombone, not really about living. And his
that's cool. That's quite the instrument to be living in a Tesla with.
he'll play it in the Tesla too. He has like soundproofing and everything that he puts up inside with like a little baby recording studio and everything back there. It's really cool.
I mean, that's actually that is cool. It's,
I'll send you their hashtags or their handles after.
yeah,
Just remind
please
me.
do. Do you mind if we explore this? There's a lot going on in the world, and we want to be positive thing a little bit, because I agree with you.
Yeah.
I think that we're different generations, clearly. I mean, everyone that watches after this is like, no shit, man. Um, One of the and I do read the news a
Yeah.
lot, and I'm an international speaker when I'm not traveling around in a school bus, and I've spoken in Beijing and I've spoken in Moscow, I've spoken in Paris and in Ireland, as well as all over the United States and in Canada. Um, and I get asked when I was in Russia, actually, as well as in Beijing, I had some peers ask me, if we're to celebrate freedom, and the United States, there is definitely, I mean, we have more freedom than a lot of countries. I do think that we're going down a road that is going to limit freedom. Um,
Is very similar to that. I
yeah,
think that
and Canada's had some very knee-jerk reactions to some unfortunate things over the past couple of years. But they said, why are you going to Moscow, right? I mean, they're not our friends. Why are you helping them? And I said, well, look, man, I can't change governments, but I can help people, right? I mean, how am I helping the world be a better place by ignoring a room of 300 or 500 people that want to hear me speak, that want to be educated by the information that I have. And they actually bought into it. There wasn't even an argument. The moment they realized that it wasn't political, this is an apolitical thing. This transcends politics, and that we're talking about the benefit of humanity. And as I'm sure you're aware, rule number one of Skooliepalooza and all the communities that Skooliepalooza helps organize is be nice. And it is stunning to me how many people got upset when we put that rule in place.
Yeah.
The world is kind of shitty enough. I mean, can't we at least try to be? That doesn't mean we can't argue. It doesn't mean we can't disagree.
I think
Right?
having respectful disagreements that people can talk it out and see each other's sides is how we all grow. Whether you agree in the end or not, it doesn't matter. But if you can't talk to each other, then nothing's ever going to change on either side.
I am so glad that you have that opinion in that mindset, because I have to say, vegans are crazy.
Extreme. I think we can be extreme.
No, I know some very cool vegans. In fact, I employ a very cool vegan. But I tried vegetarianism for a while for my ex-wife. I made it 6 months. And I can't do it. I love beef. I love bison. I love red meat. I mean, chicken's fine. Turkey's fine. Actually, I'm not a big fan of turkey. But I love red meat. In bison, beef, elk.
So I grew up on beef and everything. I get it. I 100% get it. But at the end of the day, I don't know, if you hang out with a cow for a while, they're just big dogs. I can't, there's no separation to me anymore between my dog and a cow and a turkey and a horse, and they're all the same to me. And we're all just here as beings, and I can't harm any of them anymore. So I mean, everyone can do what they want to do, but that's where I'm at personally. It's not about what they taste like to me anymore.
So this is interesting, actually, because usually I find there's two types of vegans. And I'm not talking about the crazy vegans, just like there's I do it for health. And that's actually a very arguable stance. It's very difficult to be healthy as a vegan. I'm not saying it's impossible, but you have to pay a lot more attention.
Yeah.
And then it sounds like for you, it's about the animal itself, which I actually do have a lot of respect for. For me, like when when we're on the road, it's difficult, but when we're home, we buy half cows and we buy whole pigs and things, and lamb and things. We don't buy it from the store. We know who the ranchers are. We know how they treat their animals, that kind of thing. And I know not everybody can do that, right? I'm not judging here. I'm just saying
it's not accessible to so many families, but
yeah. But I'm a big believer that any animal, livestock or not, it doesn't matter, should be able to live its best life. And if it is livestock, it should live its best life up to the point that it helps you live your best life. This idea of, herding thousands of cattle into finishing farms where they eat Skittles and corn, that's wrong.
Yeah, the chicken farming industry as a whole, like when you look into the cages that those animals are kept in and things, like it's just inhumane on a level that shocks me that it's legal, to be honest. And it's stuff like that really, like, I know that there are a lot of really ethical ways to eat meat for people. Unfortunately, at this point, also the other thing that comes into it is that at the level of meat that we eat, we now eat more meat in a day than we used to eat in a week as a whole population. So we can't sustain that with ethical meat. There's no way to do that for the population. So at some point, something's got to give, right? Like, we either have to do things unethically, which is what we've started doing, or we have to pivot what we're eating, which people aren't willing to do. So
I think, no, please continue. You've got a good point here.
No, absolutely. It's just, I think people don't want to look at what's on their plate. They don't want to try anything different. But I have a lot of friends who, like, if I make them something with the Impossible ground, have you tried that stuff?
Yeah.
It's pea protein. It gets a lot of flack because it's processed. But when
It's
people
highly processed, not just processed, it's highly processed.
there though and say, look at what's on people's plates normally, right? Because it's chicken nuggets and hot dogs and it's processed shit anyway. So
Yeah.
I don't want to hear the processed conversation because everybody's eating processed stuff anyway. We're just changing it from animal protein to plant protein. That's the only difference. It's processed either way. So we've got
So
that. But now when I make that for somebody and I don't tell them that it's pea protein, they eat it and they tell me that it's delicious and they don't know the difference. It's in our heads a lot of the time. And I get that because I came from a place where I didn't want to eat tofu. I didn't want to try tempeh. I didn't want to try any of those things because they were scary and different. And I don't like vegetables. I still don't like vegetables. I eat them
it's
because
all you're eating. When you're using Beyond ground beef, you're eating vegetables, isolated vegetable protein.
That's what I'm saying. So it's so easy to make the switch or to at least make changes that are better, but people are so stuck in they don't want to change, they don't want to see something different, they don't want to try something different because they're not willing to hear the other side and they're not willing to consider it because that makes them wrong and that's really hard. Nobody likes to be wrong.
So
And I get that.
I'd like to challenge you a little bit because you said that everybody eats processed. We don't. We only eat whole foods.
Yeah.
Now, but here's the difference, and you have a valid point. I'm not trying to argue against your point, but I actually do want to make as a socioeconomic point. We eat only whole foods because we can afford it.
That's the thing.
Right. When you talk about, if you talk about the average, I'm not exactly, these numbers I'm pulling out of my head here, but, the average wage for a United States person is something like $46,000 a year or something like that.
Less
and then
than something.
and then for a household, it's around 75,000 or something like that. To eat whole foods would be ridiculously expensive. To only eat whole foods, it's what
on it too, though. It's actually the cheapest diet on earth to eat beans and rice.
Yes,
dried rice. So if people could do that, that's actually cheaper than eating meat anyway. But people don't want to.
It's a complete protein, so your body can synthesize anything you're missing.
It's actually the healthiest diet on earth, but people don't want to see that because it's boring. And I get that.
Well,
too.
it is boring. It
might. But it is actually, like, when you take that into consideration, the cheapest, most affordable, everyone has access to beans and rice, right?
Yes.
So
in excess, actually, it's so cheap.
So that's vegan, though. That's what I'm saying. People are saying that vegan can be expensive, and it can when you're doing the vegan cheeses and vegan meats and all those things. But when you cut it down, that can be cheaper than meat, than anything. So why don't people do that then if they're not able to do anything else, right?
I think, hold on one second here. I've got a wasp that's taken some interest in me. I think a big part of it is that human beings as a whole, there are exceptions. Yeah. But one, we create an identity with whatever it is that we grew up with. And then from that identity, you determine what is right for you. And I think that, and then you get into, especially when you're talking about democratic societies, without getting pedantic. Canada is democratic, America's democratic, most of Europe's democratic, to varying levels, of course. Then you end up in an environment where corporatism rules. Right? It's all about the dollar no matter what. And whether it be the euro, the Canadian, I think it's called the dollar, Canadian dollar, or even, the US dollar. It's all about the dollar. And so what happens is that most people don't know. All they know is they walk into the store and they've been advertised to that Oreos are the way to go. And Oreos are just...
Fun fact.
They are vegan and they are also disgusting. I used to love Oreos. I used to love Chips Ahoy when I was a kid. I mean, that was like I remember when Chips Ahoy was released for the very first time.
They were so much better. They were so much better then.
Yes,
But
they were. And so were chicken nuggets.
yeah.
Because now everything is so expensive. And I'm not even talking about the last 2 years of inflation, right? I'm talking about just in general. Chicken nuggets have very little chicken in them.
Yeah.
It's all fillers.
That's all pink matter.
And the reason is because we have to be able to one, it's cheaper to build them and make them that way, and two, it increases profit. And in regards to your humanitarian, your animal welfare comment, that is actually one of the few things that I like. I really don't like California, but one of the few things about California I like is their animal welfare policies. In fact, we will, when we're on the road, unless we're on the East Coast, because if you're on the East Coast, it's impossible. But if we're in the West, when we buy eggs, we try to find eggs that are certified to be sold in California. Because that means that the chicken is able to stand up, is able to turn around. It doesn't have its beak cut off. Isn't
it shocking that that's the standard? This is why I went vegan, because I was like, I'm sorry, that's the standard in California. Like, that's the best standard. That's shocking to me. That's barbaric of us as a race. Like, why are we doing that to anything? I
don't disagree. I don't disagree at all. I think that, but I also think that the reason that people accept it is they don't know. We don't talk about it. And then when we do talk about it, they're hippies or they're fringe.
It's crazy that you care about the rights of some other being. If it was me that was locked in a cage and, something was being cut off of me because it was beneficial for someone else, I would hope that someone would stand up. Like, I don't know. I will always be the person that does then. So I'll take the vegan label for it. I don't.
I think the word rights is dangerous, but I do agree that there needs to be, and the only reason I think it's dangerous is because there is a difference between, say, human rights and animal welfare and the rights of a living being that are not human. But I do agree with you 100% that the idea that our baseline is that the animal is able to stand up and turn around.
Not cut off of it.
Yeah, and not have things cut off of it. I mean, it's a pretty reasonable what the fuck humanity, right?
It is. That's really shocking. And that's really, I think, as a whole, more people are waking up to seeing that, though. But then they hear the things like, oh, well, crazy vegan, right? And it turns them off of even wanting to think about it because they don't want to be labeled as. So we as a society are now creating this cycle where it's not cool to be enlightened. It's not cool to go learn about what's happening over there. So people don't. It's easier not to. It's easier to have our heads in the sand and not think about it. Which is the way it is with, I think.
I don't think we've created that society. I think that society was created long before my generation, my mom's generation. I mean, even as we entered the information age, as we entered, let's say, the mid 1900s, the information is there if you look for it.
We've continued it. We're not changing anything at this point, right? We have more information than we ever have before, and we still choose to ignore it.
That's true. I guess. And I won't argue with you that I'm not going to use the word elite because I think that's kind of a ridiculous term because it somehow identifies people as having a super level of power over us. And the reality is that they don't. They can certainly influence on an incredible level because they have the resources to do so. But let's call it the upper echelon. They want you stupid. Right? They do, because if you're ignorant, you're just gonna do whatever you're told, right? And
society is much easier to control, unfortunately for us.
An ignorant and fearful society. Those are the two things that must go together. You can be ignorant and still have a lot of trouble, but the moment that people are afraid, the moment that it's all about safety, think of the children. That's how you control society. and they do a damn good job of it. It's really unfortunate. Well, I mean, let's not make this a whole political broadcast, because then everyone's gonna be like, I listen to this all day long from.
Yep.
But let's talk about a few other things. What got you into nomad life? What brought you here?
So I actually bought a condo probably the year before COVID started. I was working a very normal job at Costco at the time. I had been for years. I thought I would be there forever. They had me on kind of the management track. I kept telling them I didn't want it. It kept happening anyway. And I ended up taking a leave, and I was so stressed out. My managers were pulling me aside, and they were like, you're not yourself. Like, something's going on. Are you okay? And I was like, I'm not okay. You're right. I don't know what's going on though. So I eventually, I went to see my doctor, and she said, you know what? I think you just need a break. We're just going to take you out for a few weeks. It's going to be great. It's going to be fine. You're going to see my therapist. It's going to be great. I said, okay. And I started seeing her therapist, and I realized I was not okay. And so she pulled me out for a full month. And by the end of that month, COVID had started, and it was just like, it had hit my little small town full force, and the Costco was just getting nailed, because that was when everybody was coming in, grabbing the water and toilet paper and doing that whole thing.
Right.
Went back in, and I was supposed to be getting my back to work letter. My doctor said, where did you say that you worked? And I said, Costco. And she said, yeah, what did you say that you did? And I said, I stock the toilet paper and the water. And she goes, oh, I think we're just gonna book you out for a little longer. I think sending you back from your leave into that is not gonna be beneficial. And I was like, okay, sounds good. And then it was a year and a half I ended up being off for, because COVID continued. And then for me to stay off work, I had to see other doctors, and then it turned into this whole thing. And by the end of that year and a half, I had been watching van lifers on YouTube the whole year. And I had been seeing them before. This wasn't a new thought. I had seen them for the probably 5-ish years leading up to this. But in that year, I was like, I don't know, maybe they're not crazy. Maybe they've got something. Maybe they've got kind of an idea there. Maybe I should think about that. And then as COVID continued, because it kept doing they'd be like, oh, we're going to lay off a little and everybody can unmask. And then all of a sudden it would be like, oh no, businesses are closed again. You can't go anywhere. So it was when that happened at one point that I was like, you know what, never mind. This sucks. I don't want to go back to my life of Costco and living in my condo. And I didn't even like my condo at that point. And I was like, I don't know what to do. I'm going to look at buying a van. So I looked at buying a van, and they were crazy expensive, because I had been watching all these YouTube people who were doing the builds themselves, and they didn't really talk about what the builds cost.
Oh, it's not cheap.
No, it's not. Yeah, so I went and looked, and then I found it out, and I was like, oh, wow. Yeah, no, this isn't something that I can just do, unfortunately. Whoops. So I was like, I don't even know also if I'm going to like this. I've only gone camping maybe 4 or 5 times as a kid. I don't even know if I'm going to be into this. So I decided to just start in my car. And at the time I had a Mitsubishi Lancer that I had bought a couple years before. And I was like, I'm just going to start in this. And it was just me and my cat at the time, and see how it goes. And we did that for about 4 months, and we had a great time. And I loved it. And I decided that that was the way to go. It was winter. It was so cold. But we had a great time. It was actually awesome. So then I rented out my condo to somebody else and decided not to deal with it anymore. And I started traveling, which was great. And then I met someone, which was not the plan. It's never the plan. Well, it was kind of still happening. So he was like, you know what, if you want to just park your car at my house and then use the bathroom and stuff at my house instead of trying to find a gas station that was open, because none of them were, then you can do that. And I said, sure, that sounds great. And then COVID continued for another 6 months. So we ended up kind of living together for 6 months. And by the end of that, he hadn't been seeing anyone else. I hadn't been seeing anyone else, because you weren't really allowed to be seeing anyone. So we were seeing each other, obviously. So by the end of that, he was like, okay, well, I kind of want to move to the States. Do you want to come with me?
Yeah.
And I said, well, I wanted to travel, so I guess so. Why not? Why not? Let's do it. And we had snow at that point too. He had picked up the puppy by then, so I wasn't gonna leave the puppy. I was like, sure, I guess I'll come with you.
I'll leave the guy, but no way I'm leaving the dog.
Still haven't. You'll notice the guy's not with me dog is still right beside me. Um, so we tried Austin, Texas for a little bit. He's not a nomad. He doesn't do the nomad life. So we were just living in normal houses at that point. And then we went to Las Vegas, which he loved. I did not love so much. And then I am Canadian, as we discussed.
Right.
So I can only be down in the States for 6 months at a time anyways. And then I have to come back up to Canada or
Right.
figure out like another visa. So he was staying down there because he's working on immigrating, which is fine. And we had always known that that would be something that was happening, that I would be coming back up. So he had the Tesla. This was his car. We had it in the States, and it had to come back up to Canada also because you can only have a Canadian car in the States for 6 months, at least on the insurance that I have. It only covers
Right.
6 months. You have to bring it back up through the border. And then I think you can turn around and come right back down, but it has to like visit Canada at least. So the car had to come back. I had to come back. The dog was coming with me, and my cat was coming with me. So he was like, "We'll just take the car, and then you can like van life all summer in Canada." And I was like, "Great, that sounds awesome." So I did that. I had a great summer, and then I came back down to the States and lived with him again for another like 4 or 5 months, and then I came back up to Canada, and we broke up. But I had the
Well,
car and the dog, so so he said, "You know what? You can keep those, and we'll just call it good." And I was like, "Okay, that sounds." This is not ideal. It was not what I thought was happening. So, I mean, I was like, this is like a consolation prize, kind of, I guess, but okay. Thank you.
well,
Oh,
I
I
have
will.
to say, it,
Um,
it could have been a lot worse, right? It sounds like he wasn't a bad guy or anything. It just
oh
didn't work
gosh,
out.
just yeah, it was we had very different lifestyles, kind of envisioned, I think, and happens. That happens. It's hard, I think, especially when we were in the pandemic and we had met on like pandemic terms, like nobody was really talking about what the real future was looking like because it was very much like the world was not normal. Um, so yeah, it's okay. I think we missed a lot of the important conversations that we maybe should have had early.
Yeah.
Okay. We got
When
had
the
eventually, so that's all that matters. It's all
when the
good.
pandemic hit for us, one I saw it coming because one of the things I do for a day job is conferences, tech conferences outside of say Skooliepalooza, and as the everything was starting to come down and we were watching as the oh, we're going to close the border, and as soon as they said we're not letting flights in, I'm like, yeah, we're going to go stock up right now. And we did. I mean, we had enough toilet paper for and paper towels and alcohol wipes and bleach wipes and masks and food. And it was funny. So the first, I guess it'd be so the pandemic officially hit in March. In fact, for us, it was particularly bittersweet because it was like I don't remember the exact date, but it was like March 19th. We were supposed to have a conference, and this is our marquee conference. 1,000 people show up. And we canceled it because we knew, I mean, it was obvious things. Do we cancel or do we run with it? It was obvious that it just wasn't going to happen. So we canceled it and did the, acts of God clause. And it was funny. The day after the conference was supposed to start, our country shut down. Like just boom, shut down. And I feel bad for a lot of people. We had already lived on our acreage in Bellingham, so for us, not a whole lot changed.
Yeah. For a lot of people, like day-to-day life was very different.
Oh, not only very different, it was demonstrably damaging the way they handled it. And it doesn't matter if it was a red state or blue state; doesn't matter. It was bad. And what we did is like September of that year. I still had my youngest with me. She's 18 now, and she's on her own. But that year, my wife and my youngest, and we're looking at each other and like, why are we sitting here with a town that's completely shut down? We can't do anything. We're just sitting here getting fat and watching Netflix. Why don't we leave? Because we had a bus. So why are we staying here? And we did. We just left. We're done with this. This is the pandemic does not it doesn't affect us the way that it affects other people. And I feel really bad for other people. But it's funny, we went all around the United States twice.
Yeah.
Never got COVID. Not once. Met people, stayed with people, drank with people, loved with people, partied with people, adventured. Never got COVID. Pandemic is over. As a gift, my wife bought me Ron White. If you don't know who that is, he's a very offensive comic. I highly recommend Very Offensive Comics. Tickets. He had just gone on tour because pandemic was finally over. We walked into the venue. It was an outdoor venue even. And we walked into the venue and we looked at each other and said, we're going to get COVID. And sure enough, 5 days later, we had COVID.
You have to just know too. You just get the feeling. You're like,
Yeah, it's like, you could tell the people were there I mean, I don't care if you were a masker or not. That didn't really bother me. Not because I don't recognize the value of a mask, but because was not in a demographic that was worried about getting COVID. But these people, I mean, these were full-on mouth breathers, right? How are you? That kind of thing, right? It's just automatically, we're going to get COVID. It was a good show, though. It was a great show. Okay, so now we know how you got into nomad life, and we know what brought you here. I know what our biggest challenges are for being in a bus, but it's got to be different for you. What's your biggest challenge living in a Tesla?
it's wet, honestly. Because I can climate control everything, and that's not a big deal. So like cold is fine, heat is fine, nothing matters. It's all good. But if the dog gets wet, the whole car
Oh,
is wet. And he's like, I'll show you. He's right beside me. He's beautiful, but he's so fluffy. So when that little thing
let
gets
me get a
wet,
better.
he's so
Okay, hey, little
hi.
guy.
Good boy. Yeah, he's about 55 pounds of fluff. And when he gets wet, it just saturates everything. And it takes, like, in a house, it takes like 5 hours to dry. In a car, it takes longer and everything is wet first. So that isn't great. I try to stay out of the super wet climates if I can help it, but it's
You're in
starting.
a super wet climate.
It hasn't been that rainy though. It's been kind of weird. So I don't know. We can usually like hang out for the day somewhere, you know, covered, go for a couple walks when it's not completely downpouring and stay like relatively dry. Like, a little bit of wet is fine,
Sure.
but when he's totally wet, it's a lot. Yeah. And then winter, he's a snow dog obviously, so he loves to play in the snow and roll in the snow and be in the snow and then bring the snow into the car with him. So that also is obviously not my favorite thing. I do have all waterproof bedding and everything at this point, because that's super necessary in here. So everything is just like you can shake it off and it's going to be dry underneath. And that has been very helpful this year. I didn't do that at first. Um, that's probably our biggest thing, then, for sure.
Well, I mean, as you said it, the only thing that went through my head is that wet dog smell.
Yeah, that too. I don't notice it anymore, but I'm sure everyone else does.
So so your gear, you have waterproof gear. I mean, I imagine, like when I think about, okay, if I had to do a bare bones build, van, Tesla, doesn't matter. I used to be a backpacker. I can't do it anymore, but I used to be a backpacker, and that's how I think about it. Is like you need to get backpacking gear. Is that what you did?
So I've got, because I don't have to take my setup down is the only difference. So like I don't care how small it packs or anything.
Okay,
I just leave my bed up all the time. I have my rear seats just folded down flat. They're pretty close to flat anyway. It's like slightly, elevated, but whatever. It's close enough that it doesn't bother me anyways. And then I've got a pretty decent, like I want to say 4 or 5 maybe inch memory foam mattress. It's a trifold, so it's supposed to be able to like fold up and be put away or whatever, but it's too
sure.
big to fold up and put away in the car. So it's flat or it's out of the car or the option. So it doesn't really matter though how much space it takes up, which makes it really comfy. And then on top I can show you, I have this little thin thing from Little Helper. It's got absorbent stuff on one side and waterproof stuff on the other side.
Oh,
So
okay.
I can flip it depending on what's going on. And then I've got a rumple blanket as my comforter with a bunch of like normal fluffy blankets underneath it. But I keep this one as the top blanket because then no matter what gets on it, it's going to be able to slough right off and not be a problem. So
Fair enough.
that has been the solution so far.
All right.
So wet
So
dog
we
happening.
know how you got into nomad life.
Yeah.
We know what your biggest challenge is. Right now, so for me it's easy, right? When I look at and I would show everyone, but unfortunately my microphone tends to freak out if I move it. What I'm looking at right now outside of our lovely guest is New Mexico, right?
Yeah.
There's no buildings. I think it's the White Mountains in the Gia National Forest, and today is one of those days. We're at like 6,000 feet, and so the clouds look close. But it's not. Yeah, I mean, you can see, right? You can see the clouds behind me. Um,
That's
and that for me is what it's about, right? I love getting outside of exploring new towns and new cultures, because in America there are very different cultures from even town to town. Um, it's about that freedom, right? Just being able to just chill out and enjoy. What is your most fulfilling moments as a nomad?
I like freedom. I like being able to pack up and go anywhere. I was a child of divorce, so there was a
Mm-hmm.
lot of like packing my stuff from one house to the other house. And I get really sick of that, even as an adult. Like, if I wanted to go stay at a friend's house for a week or something, I'm probably not going to do it because I don't want to pack for it, you know? So having
Sure.
all of my stuff just right here all the time means that I can go do what I want and not think about it all the time, which is lovely. I can just jump in the car and go whenever I want, wherever I want, see whoever I want, whenever, and that's lovely. And I have everything with me all the time, which I also love because my other pet peeve is when you get somewhere that you've packed for and you don't have something that you wish you had, and you can picture it at home. You're like, I know that those are sitting right on my bed and I could have grabbed them, but it never happens to me anymore because all of it's right here. And I love
Yeah,
that.
it's funny. I was talking to Amanda, my wife, um, about this, because since we do go home, because I mean, and you know this, you're in Vancouver Island, Vancouver Island, Bellingham area, from say late April, mid May, all the way to October is just fantastic, right? It's wonderful. Um, and she was actually experiencing that. She's like, I'm not sure, do I really want to get back on the road? And I'm like, just remember, the long dark is coming. For those that don't know, if you live in the northern climate, the long dark it's hard. um, but what really got me is that as much as I love the land, what the
Yeah.
house is risk, liability, bills, repairs. And do I miss my 60-inch TV and my ungodly, ridiculous surround sound system? Yes, I do. I'm not going to lie. I don't. I miss it. If I could figure out a way to put it in my bus without it being a 40-foot bus, I would do it. Do I miss my workshop? Yes, I miss being able to just go out and tinker and tear things up with tools
And walk
and
away
then
and
leave
come
it
back.
there. Yeah, but in reality, I have everything I need right now, right here. I have Starlink if I need to work. I have 4G if I need to work. I have the best woman I've ever known. I've got my 3 Frenchies. Why, right? Well, why not live this life? I guess is what I'm saying. Um, okay. So what are you hoping to achieve? Are you I mean, is this your long term? Are you hoping that there's going to be a bow in your life that's like, yeah, I've got a Tesla too. Let's just like open the doors and have a tent between us or something.
I'm really at this point, I'm super go with the flow. I think every time I really plan something, it just blows up, So at this point, I'm just taking what comes and like seeing where that takes me, and I'm kind of open to whatever. I think at some point I would like more space, would be my next big goal probably. Like I really love a lot of the factors that I do get with the Tesla, like the not charging or not, the not paying for charging and things like that. So ideally, I think I'll go with an electric van at some point. But alternatively, I would actually do like a tiny house in the forest or something because I've
Mhm.
been on Vancouver Island now for probably a solid 5 months, I think, maybe a little longer. And I just love it out here. I leave once in a while for like a quick weekend trip or something on the mainland. And every time I leave, I'm like, I just kind of want to come back. So I kept thinking that I would want to travel the States again or something. And I've been telling myself that I would do it this year. And I keep avoiding it and I keep procrastinating against it. So I think what I want is to be on the island, apparently, because this is where I still am and this is, you know, I don't want to leave. So maybe then I'll do like a tiny house build out here somewhere eventually. I would like land maybe at some point because I do love animals. So I would maybe do like some, I don't know what I would do with that, foster something. I used to foster cats, so I've maybe become like a crazy cat lady again. I don't know, but I'm kind of open to anything that way. And the other thing is just that the world is very unsettled right now. So I will say, like, as a solo female traveler, like I am a lot braver than I used to be. However, I definitely am not as excited to go like, especially down south and things by myself anymore. Like I would love to have a caravan of a few people or something at least, but solo is starting to get a little not my favorite feeling down there. So
So
I don't know.
I definitely will never pretend to understand the anxiety that could be brought about by being a solo female traveler.
Yeah, it's very
I
different. And I will say, like, I actually started solo travel because I also am super freaked out alone in a house. So I actually don't do well just sitting alone in a regular home anyway, because I have a lot of paranoia over like people know your schedule. People can see you
yeah,
coming out all the time, like you're a sitting duck in a house, and I don't like that. So I actually feel safer in the car a lot of the time because I'm moving all the time. If somebody sees me and I feel weird about it, I can just move, and it's not a big deal. However, it does bring up a whole other host of issues, right? Because you are also living in a vehicle. So there are also a bunch of issues that come along with that. So it's kind of like no matter what you do, there are going to be risks, and that's fine. But especially just, there is tension and stuff down there. So I'm always just a little when I get back to Canada, I'm always like, oh,
so
how,
what tension
how
are we talking about here? I'm curious about that.
there's a lot more gun violence in the States still. Like it's catching up in Canada for sure, but it's a lot more volatile in the States from what I've noticed. I feel like there's a lot more random like road rage incidents and things that people randomly have guns and stuff, and that hasn't really made its way to Canada as much yet. So I mean, it happens everywhere. I'm not saying it doesn't happen everywhere. Just
Sure.
the state doesn't feel as safe as Canada to me either, you know? And I also do find like especially in a lot of the southern states, the attitude towards women specifically is still a bit
Now, are we
I'm gonna
talking Arizona or are we talking like Alabama?
yeah, I'm gonna say a lot of that.
Well, but which? Because they're two very different Souths, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I would say West Coast and the South in general for me have two different vibes.
Oh,
Like I haven't
agreed.
spent enough time down south, but to me, like I don't feel super safe down there alone. Like I would want a man with me if I was down there, whereas the West Coast, I feel fine. Like
Interesting.
that's what I'm saying. It's just that's my own perception, and that's what I've personally experienced. I'm not saying that's what everyone experiences. I'm
Sure.
sure it's safe for a lot of people. Um, but I've met a lot more very brazen people down there, which probably is just who I happen to meet. But I was like, I don't know, like this is very much like I'm getting a vibe that I'm actually not super safe here, and I don't like that. So I do find for that, like I'm not as excited to go and explore as I would like to be, unfortunately. But
So I will say, definitely different areas of the states, you're gonna run into different problems. We don't run into road rage. The only thing we ever run into is people getting irritated because on the highway, I will hit 54 miles an hour and I hit cruise control, and that's it. Now I sit in the slow lane. I'm not sitting there trying to be a jerk and be in the fast lane or anything like that. But people get irritated And they'll like when they go by, they'll give me the single finger salute, and I just smile and wave. It's
On,
just
I'll put my speed limit on like just at the speed limit on cruise control, but because I'm in the Tesla and they know I can do faster, I get that response too. So I mean,
yeah. No, I'm sure.
whatever. People are
Um,
angry. People are just
and
angry anyway. That's fine. Like,
and
whatever.
there's no doubt that there's more guns in the States. It's part of our culture. It's part of
It
how
is.
we was
It is, yeah.
founded. I have guns. My wife has guns. Um, we're also not, but we're not. We're not. I'm going to say this. I'll probably regret it. There are three types of gun owners in the United States. One is the hunter. I'm totally good with that.
Yeah.
One is my wife and I. We have guns for self-protection, and we're also a little bit of collectors. So we like to buy Old West style guns, things like that. We are both proficient. We both conceal carry, and that's just the way it is. It's just who we are. And then there's your jackass who has a 6th grade education and an AR-15, who wears tactical gear,
Yeah.
who thinks he's cool. He's
And
the
that's
problem.
and they're loose cannons also,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah,
And
they're the problem.
and
And I'm not
that's
saying, forgive me, I'm not saying the AR-15 is the problem. That's not
yeah.
what I'm saying. I'm saying the people that announce themselves that way are the problem.
Although I would
Uh,
even say, like the AR-15 is a military grade assault rifle. Like we probably don't need access to those as civilians. I don't
uh,
know.
I would say that's a very Canadian/European perspective.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because the idea that you would trust the government to protect you is ignorant. Just look at history,
Yeah.
right? Now, and let's be clear, the AR-15 is actually not an assault rifle. You have to be a 30 caliber or above to be an assault rifle, and the AR-15 is not a 30 caliber or above. It looks like one, and yes, it is true that it uses a NATO round. And the whole purpose of the AR-15, I learned this from the military. I was talking to a guy that has been in the military for years, and I was like, I just don't understand, because I don't have an AR-15 because they're not cool to me. They're not in any way, shape, or form cool or useful to me. But apparently, and I don't know if this is true, but apparently the idea behind the AR-15 is that if you're in battle, you take 3 people out of battle for every injured person by an AR-15, because 2 people go to pull them out, right? But that's not even really the point. The point is, I get where you're coming from. I do think that the media,
With this caveat, the Canadian perspective of this, slash Australian even, I would say, is that once you
sure,
get rid of the high grade military rifles like those, a lot of the high mass shootings disappear. And there is a correlation to that cannot be dissuaded, and I cannot be dissuaded about that. I am all about the hunting, all about collecting, whatever. I just think when you're taking things that can do mass damage into people that we know have a 6th grade education and that we know don't have what it means behind that gun to be carrying it, right? Then we do have a problem. We do need
I
to
don't
do something.
I don't disagree. And actually, to actually validate your point, and I don't remember the exact number. Okay, I don't have it in front of me, but it was something like, of the 12 mass shootings that have happened over the last 4 years or whatever it is, they've all been with AR-15s.
And that's just,
But
and I'm not saying that people wouldn't have caused a lot of damage with a regular gun either. However, if they would have had to reload or something, anything that would have taken them down for a few minutes, someone could have done something instead of them causing the mass damage that they did in much less time, right? Like
okay,
that's all.
so this is actually where I would disagree with you, because, and hear me out, the AR-15 isn't particularly special in its capacity. The issue that with the AR-15 is that, how can I put this without being ridiculously offensive to a lot of people? I can't. The majority, every single AR-15 owner, and I'm not saying they're all like this, okay? Not by any stretch am I saying every AR-15 owner is like this. But, and I am a man of a certain generation, so please bear with my language, every single AR-15 owner I have ever met is an absolute jackass. And that's the problem. It's and that doesn't mean that there aren't people out there that have AR-15s and they're totally nice and cool. That's not the point. The point is that the people are like, hey, I gotta have my AR-15. Do not tread on me. The problem with that is that statistically speaking, you're absolutely right. If you're going to do a mass shooting, you're likely going to do it with an AR-15. Now, the last one that happened was not an AR-15. It is, as I understand it, was actually an AR-10. That is an assault rifle. That is a very dangerous. I mean, that's a 1,000-yard rifle, right?
From the Canadian perspective, then sitting here in Canada, I just think to myself, if we're seeing these issues over and over, then why don't we just get rid of those weapons, right? Like, keep your weapons. I don't give a fuck if you keep some of your weapons, whatever. Keep just maybe those ones we don't need as, civilians, because those civilians aren't people that are standing up to the government. They're people that are killing other civilians. So we have a problem. We got to do something.
No, you're right. I actually think of it, I mean, my solutions to the problem aren't particularly popular, mainly because people are like, how dare you? I actually think that we should arm, and hear me out, okay? I think we should arm everybody. But I think that they should be trained and psychologically analyzed. And it should be at least as damn hard to buy a gun as it is to legally drive a car. At least.
That said, though, I think if we could just get some mental health.
Oh, yeah, that would be part of, that's the whole psychological.
That alone, though, would do magical things for our society, because the problem right now is that we're putting weapons into the hands of people who are unstable and can't get help. So to put guns in everyone's hands is a lot, and to give everyone the mental health that they need, or the mental health support that they need to have a gun, is going to be a lot. But if we what if we just took guns out of the equation? What if we just fixed mental health? Call me crazy. What if we just supported people? What if people didn't have to feel like their next meal might never come? What if we could find a way as a society to work on things like that? People might not be so angry. We might not need the so much in the first place. We might all just be able to chill. We might all just be able to be friends. I think that would be cool. I think that would be amazing.
You're sounding like a little hippie chick.
I am, yeah. Right on brand.
I don't disagree with you. I think so. Amanda is, she's a CEO, but she's also a Duke certified health and wellness coach. And I do think that one of the problems we have as a society, forget guns. I mean, those are a symptom. It's not the problem.
And that's
we're not investing in the future of people.
No.
We're investing in the future of corporations. And I think that's something that's very different about a lot of nomads. Is nomads, it doesn't matter what end of the spectrum they're on. I mean, I know a lot of Trumpers, MAGA nomads, and I know a lot of crystal worshiping nomads. And the one thing that most of them have in common is that part of the reason they do this is they're tired of the world that has been created by the governments that exist. And so they escape it by doing this. All right.
My perspectives with that too is when we're all busy fighting each other, like when my little hippie self is fighting the gun people and we're all angry, like none of us are actually dealing with the problem, which is the government. It's not, right. I don't care what your views are. You don't care what my views are. We actually probably have a lot of the same views.
Yes.
It's just, but we're being toted against each other all the time because it's easier for us to be fighting than for us to be fighting them.
Oh, no, they absolutely want us fighting because then all we do is fight and pay taxes. That's the whole point, right?
Exactly. So we just have to flip that, which is the hard part. People don't want to flip from the current opponent over to that, but that's the shift that needs to happen. Is like, instead of us looking at each other, everybody needs to turn that way and see what is happening over there. They don't want us to see it's behind the curtain.
No, they don't. Well, I mean, it comes back to exactly what you were saying with food, right? People don't know that the way pigs, which by the way are smarter than dogs, right? They don't know how they're treated. Now, I don't have a problem with pork. I love pork, but I do want I want the pig before it becomes my pork to be treated very well. And another thing that people, and you'll appreciate this, I think, another thing that people don't realize is that the happier the livestock, up to the point that it becomes your resource, the better it tastes and the more nutritious it is. People don't realize that. They think that we're just starting to now get publicized. Oh, wait, you mean the quality of soil determines the level of nutrients within the plant?
Yeah.
It does. I mean,
Quantity, but people don't actually like stop and think about it in every sense. It's everything that you do. It's every shirt that you buy. Like instead of going and shopping on Shein and buying 52 $5 t-shirts, just buy two that are going to last you for years. You know, like it's everything that we've done. And this is again like a symptom of capitalism, that this is what we're supposed to be doing. This is what we're told all the time, is that we can be over consuming and we can be buying more and we can be doing more and we can never be happy because we can never just have what we have. It always
enough.
has to be more. Yeah. It's constant. It's all the same issue.
Well, and that gets compounded because
Yeah.
for those of us who have everything they need, I have reached a point in my life through a lot of hard work that anything that I buy that's not a supply, okay, food, bleach wipes, or something like that, anything that I buy that's not a supply is literally something that I buy because I want.
Yeah, because
I
I
don't
want
need
it.
it.
It's
Yeah,
an
I don't
incredibly
need it.
privileged place to be.
Yeah, it's an absolutely a privileged place to be. Now, I worked really hard to get there, but it is absolutely a privileged place to be. A lot of people succumb to a flip of the compass where the want is actually a need. It's the only way they can be happy because of the society that we have created and that we allow to continue to exist. All right. Couple of last questions here because we are over the hour mark. What are you hoping to achieve? Are you hoping to change the world, or are you a little bit more comprehensive?
You know, I didn't really start out with a goal, to be honest. I just was getting a lot of the same questions all of the time. And I don't love answering the same questions all the time. So I thought, I'm just going to make some videos and direct people to those. If they've got, I'm like, just go watch my life if you want and just not answer the same questions all the time. So that was the original goal. That's where it started. But I got a lot of people commenting that were like, "Oh, I watch your videos because like I'm stressed and they make me feel peaceful, or because like I really like watching your life because like it's like a break from mine, or stuff like that." And I was like, "Oh, that's really nice. That's why I watch social media. Like I'm always watching people who make me feel calmer or make me feel more at peace or show me how to live in a better way or a different way or something like that." So I was like, why don't I start posting that then? So I don't really know what my goal is with that, but if it helps somebody or makes somebody feel any better about their life, then that I guess would be the goal.
I think that's a fantastic goal. And you brought up something, a lot of people, and to be full disclosure, I was one of these people. I hate reality TV. I really do. I hate it. But that's what we're doing right here, right? This is reality TV, except that it's actually reality. It's not. It's not scripted. It doesn't have a big film crew. It doesn't have artificial antagonism or conflict. And so I too have gotten into this habit of now I have to learn something. That's for me. That's the thing is if I'm going to watch a video, I need to learn. I don't. It's not. There's actual entertainment value for me in learning versus just watching somebody dance funny or something like that. But I actually one of the things I keep telling people on various channels, whether it be Reddit or whatever, is people come up and they're like, God, these people are asking the same question over and over and over and over. And this is what you did. People were asking you the same question over and over and over and over. And what I tell everybody is just don't answer them. Just provide a link where they have to go and do the research themselves. All these people that post on Facebook, what's the best battery to buy? What's the pros and cons versus whatever, this and that? Stop answering the question. Write one article. Yeah, write one article or record one video and then just post the link and they'll have all their answers. And then if the person comes back and says, "Thank you so much. Can you explain X based on Y?" Then you have something to add to it. What would you and actually I'm going to change this question just a little bit because I don't want it to be generic. You have a unique position: one, that you're a vehicle dweller, not a schoolie or van dweller, and
Yeah.
two, you're a solo female.
Yeah.
So what would you tell an aspiring female nomad?
Oh, just do it. If you're thinking about it, just go do it. I always say this, but I talk to so many people who are like, "Oh, I would love to live the way that you do. I would love to try what you do. I would love to camp. I would love to whatever." And I feel like over half of them, if they go and actually try it, hate it. They do not like the lifestyle. They like what they see on Instagram of it. And
Right.
that is okay. And I 100% get it. But before you build this up to be something really exciting and beautiful in your mind, just go try it and see if that's what it is for you. Because I think a lot of people spend a lot of time building it up to be something really incredible and then they try it and it's not. But on the flip, it can be beautiful. A
Oh
lot of
yeah.
people that I have met also love it, right? Like there's a lot of people that thrive living this way. But just I think that's the best thing to do is just get out there and do it and find out what
Uh,
it is for you before you worry about it too much.
I would agree, and I think that one of the things that, and I'm not in no way am I trying to be sexist. It's stereotypical, really. I think we can agree that there are differences between men and women, right?
Absolutely.
And I find that uh, most women prefer flushing toilets, right? And so for to just do it, except that you may be shitting in a bucket,
Yeah.
right?
That's right. That's like those are parts of the lifestyle that people don't like. I've definitely posted videos about like how do I go to the bathroom? Like I have a couple
Right.
of videos about it. But I'm not gonna say like every time I make a video, oh, you know what, I have to go pee right now. Let me just step out into the woods. I'm not gonna remind people like I'm filming, right? So I think people do forget though that those are realities to
Hmm.
this lifestyle. So when you're watching people on Instagram that are, they're on the top of the mountain and they're like, oh my God, it's a beautiful sunset. They're with their dog. It's beautiful. And you're like, I could park my van there and I could do that. And you can, and it can be beautiful and it can be wonderful. But you just, yeah, that's the thing. You're
But
like,
there's a cost, and the cost
yeah,
is you might be shitting in a bucket.
you're gonna have to figure out how to boil your water if you want coffee in the morning, and it's not gonna come from an outlet in your house, and your phone might die for a minute, and you're gonna have to figure that out. And there's a few things like that that I know, like the creature comforts are definitely not there. And I know, to be fair, I've dated a lot of men also that like would not be okay
Oh
without their
yeah.
creature. So I mean, it's definitely not just a gendered thing, but more of my girlfriends for sure would have an issue with be like, I don't know, I can't shower every night, and like that's not okay, which is totally fine. Just
Yeah,
that's the thing.
I
You gotta
think in a
know
lot of
yourself on the lifestyle as well.
yeah, and I do think it's definitely there are certain aspects of it that are easier for men.
Yeah.
Safety, right? Safety is number one. Number
If I was a 6'5" man, the confidence I would be all over. I would probably be van lifing in like Switzerland or something. Like I would not be stressed at all. But like,
but then also so this is I have not done anything with my facial hair since we left for the season. Uh, and by the time we get to Skooliepalooza, unless I do something, this is going to be ridiculous.
yeah,
But like this doesn't bother me, right? But a lot of women, they want to wash their hair at least every couple of days, right? And that takes a lot of water. And how much water are you carrying? And you know, are you in the Wendy's bathroom washing your hair in the sink? You
yeah,
know,
yeah, exactly.
so all right.
Like,
Well, hey, is there anything you would like to add for your viewers or ours? Obviously, we're hoping this will be a mutual benefit.
I mean, I don't think so. If you guys were interested in what I was saying, pop over to my channel. I am Little Hippie Gal everywhere. That's about it.
Absolutely.
Have
So you're
anything
on YouTube everywhere now. When you say everywhere, are we just talking about YouTube, Instagram, or are we also on TikTok? And
to talk? I have a Pinterest account that I'm really random on. I don't even know where all I am anymore.
maybe do you have a link tree yet?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so that's how you would know if you need to find her. Look, is it just Linktree at Little Hippie Gal or whatever it is? Yeah. All right. Well, hey, remember to let this finish uploading. I'm going to
Yeah,
go ahead and And with that, this has been the second episode of the Skooliepalooza podcast. I hope we're probably going to reach out to you. It won't be me, but we're doing the Lady Nomads podcast as well, and that'll be all about overcoming the challenges as being a lady on the road.
Okay.
And with that, thank you all.
Sounds good. Thanks for watching.